This is Matthew Cratter from Trade University, and today I want to celebrate Bitcoin's birthday. Bitcoin is officially a teenager now. It's 13 years old. The Bitcoin white paper was published 13 years ago today on October 31st, 2008. And it looks like this is being celebrated all around the world. Here is the white paper being projected outside of a shopping mall in Tokyo, I believe. Now, the first Bitcoin was actually mined. The Genesis block was mined by Satoshi on January 3rd of 2009. But I think it's really appropriate to consider the publication of this white paper to be the first, to really be Bitcoin's birthday. Now, it's also interesting to note that Satoshi allowed this time to pass between publishing the paper and actually starting to mine Bitcoin. Anyone could have taken this paper, done whatever they wanted with it. There's no pre-mine in Bitcoin in this way, where basically the secret of Bitcoin was published first, and then the Genesis block was mined about 3 or 4 months later. There are a lot of questions why Satoshi chose October 31st to publish this paper. A lot of what he does has a lot of symbolism involved. There's been some speculation that he may have done it in order to make it the same date, the same day of the month that Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to the door of the Wittenberg Castle Church. That was October 31st, 1517. Obviously, October 31st is also Halloween, the ancient Celtic or Gaelic holiday. Samhain, I think I'm pronouncing it correctly. This was the pagan sort of pre-Christian holiday that was celebrated on roughly October 31st. And it was a day marked by a lot of feasting, and the burial mounds were opened. And there was this idea that the dead and the undead could mingle during this period. Obviously, Halloween was put on this same date. Halloween is actually the evening. It means the evening of All Saints' Day. All Saints' Day is November 1st. So we have this religious background to October 31st. Then, of course, there's just the American holiday and things that are scary. I'd like to think that Satoshi published this on Halloween, knowing that Bitcoin is the scariest thing that the current financial system has ever seen. As Warren Buffett has said, Bitcoin is rat poison. It's certainly rat poison to all of his beloved holdings like Goldman Sachs and Wells Fargo, etc. The Bitcoin white paper, October 31st, 2008, was really published during the height of the great financial crisis. Lehman Brothers had filed for bankruptcy a few weeks earlier. And on the week of October 27th, so the same week as Halloween that year, there was a second round of recapitalization where the U.S. Treasury funded 22 banks with $38 billion. This seems almost quaint in retrospect. These amounts are so small. Now we throw around trillions of dollars as if it's also a small amount of money. A lot of people don't realize, but the original quote about the original Satoshi quote that goes, "The root problem with conventional currency is all the trust that's required to make it work. The central bank must be trusted not to debase the currency, but the history of fiat currencies is full of breaches of that trust." This is the one suggestion in Satoshi's writing that Bitcoin should be viewed as a store of value. But this is not in the white paper. There's been a lot of back and forth about the title of the white paper. You have what I would call Bitcoin white paper fundamentalists who think that just because Satoshi used this phrase peer-to-peer electronic cash system, that this somehow determines the entire subsequent history of Bitcoin. These are the people who are behind Bcash and BSV. BSV stands for Bitcoin Satoshi's vision. The whole idea that we would have a leader and be constantly following his vision is also antithetical to the whole decentralized idea of Bitcoin. This was the argument that the Bitcoin white paper fundamentalists made. Bitcoin needs to become sort of a global PayPal. We need to increase the block size because that's what the title of Satoshi's white paper was. And my own take on this, you're free, of course, to have your take, is that the white paper, it's more of a teaser. It's not like the U.S. Constitution, where you're going to constantly have people going back to it for hundreds of years, citing it by chapter and verse. And it's not Holy Scripture either. It's a seminal document. It's extremely important. It's a solution to the Byzantine generals' problem. But the whole point of Bitcoin is it has no leader. There's no Vitalik. There's no foundation. There's no Ethereum foundation. There's no one in control of the project. And Satoshi left just 3 or 4 years after publishing this white paper. Bitcoin has had many thought leaders over the years who have been disgraced. People like Roger Ver, who started Bcash, Trace Mayer, who was pumping some altcoins. And this is the history of Bitcoin. It's a history that's fairly leaderless. We have Bitcoin influencers who come and go. Many of the early Bitcoin influencers are no longer really active in the space, or they've turned to altcoin scams. Satoshi obviously left very early on in the project. So Bitcoin, it's one of these things that's hard to describe. It has this evolution. Clearly, BTC is the winner. It's the market anointed winner in this process. Bcash and BSV are no longer even in the top 10 cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin is very special. It had this immaculate conception. After you've done Bitcoin once you've created Bitcoin, and once you've created digital scarcity for the first time, you can't really do it again. Everything else is a copy. Everything else ends up looking like a pre-mine or a scam. So this is another reason to celebrate the birth of the white paper. This is a very special point in history, and it's a point in history. It's an event that cannot be recreated. Everything else after this becomes a parody or a scam. And I would actually argue that the essence of Bitcoin is not even in its software. If you try to really drill down and ask yourself, what is Bitcoin? The best answer I have, and it's obviously a very hard question and different people have different answers, but Bitcoin is really a social consensus. And this is one reason we talk to each other on YouTube, we talk to each other on Twitter, we have memes, etc. It's an emergent nation of people that are dispersed, decentralized all around the world, but that have common values, that value freedom, that value hard money, etc. So I'd say the essence of Bitcoin really is this social consensus. It's not the software. The software itself has been changed and updated many times over the years. It looks very different from when Satoshi published what's now called Bitcoin Core. So what is the social consensus around Bitcoin? I would say that the most important thing is the 21 million cap. If there's anything that's holy or sacred or untouchable in Bitcoin, it is this scarcity that makes everything possible. Also, obviously, the proof of work consensus mechanism. This is much, much better than anything like proof of stake that can be gamed. Proof of stake ultimately devolves into something that looks like the current financial system, where you have large stakeholders who just sit on their piles of wealth and get wealthier. Proof of work is competitive. You have to constantly upgrade your miners and become more and more efficient. It's really capitalism and the free market at its best. The other parts of the social consensus are the fact that the full nodes are in control. You can create whatever Bitcoin you want, whatever version of the software, but unless you get the full nodes to run it, it doesn't really matter. There are now full nodes running Bcash and BSV, but they're a very small network. And the market has spoken. The market caps of BSV and Bcash are negligible at this point. So the social consensus around Bitcoin, this 21 million cap, proof of work, the importance of the full nodes. The full nodes are really in control. When there was a coup in 2016, 2017, the block size wars, and a bunch of big corporations like Grayscale and Coinbase and everyone got together and tried to increase the block size, the full and conspired with the Bitcoin miners to do this, the full nodes won this war. And this really shows who controls Bitcoin. It's not the Bitcoin Core developers. It's not the miners. It's not the large exchanges. It's the full nodes. It's the Bitcoin plebs like you and me. The other piece of the social consensus is obviously the blockchain's history. Ever since the Genesis block was mined, you have this set of UTXOs, which we can talk about in another video. But you basically have the open ledger, which is the blockchain, the Bitcoin blockchain, the history of all Bitcoin transactions. And we all agree that this is the history. We agree on the current state of the ledger, that certain people have certain holdings of Bitcoin, or I should say certain pseudonymous accounts have, or certain pseudonymous addresses have certain holdings of Bitcoin. Cryptos like Bcash and BSV, they basically borrowed the history of the Bitcoin blockchain in terms of its history of transactions. They forked it and they created their own history. So even this is a little bit malleable. BTC agrees on a certain blockchain history since 2017, and I would argue that it's obviously the real Bitcoin. But Bitcoin itself is a social consensus. You could create this social consensus using slightly different software. So just as we shouldn't be Bitcoin white paper fundamentalists, we also should not be Bitcoin software fundamentalists. You theoretically could update the blockchain and enforce the consensus rules and maintain the 21 million max supplier cap using carrier pigeons instead of the internet. And this would obviously be very inefficient. There'd be problems involved, but you would still have the same set of UTXOs, the same blockchain history. I think it's an appropriate point right now too, as we're looking back over the last 13 years and Bitcoin becoming a teenager, to really look at the state of the cryptocurrency space. And I'm not even a fan of that term cryptocurrency, but I like this meme. Crypto back then, we solved the Byzantine generals problem and created a global decentralized currency. Crypto now, coin has dog. If Satoshi's still around, or if he could be around, and he would see the emphasis on chasing dog coins, I think he is or would be extremely appalled. Even looking at the market caps of the top 10 cryptocurrencies, which is a very strange category in itself. But we can see obviously Bitcoin is number one. It's off my screen here. We have, and this is again arranged by market cap, but we have two completely captured stable coins that are regulated, that can be turned on and off by those who control the ledger, and that are pegged to the melting ice cube, that's the US dollar. These are the stable coins USDC and USDT. Tether. We have Ethereum, which I've covered extensively on this channel, which had a giant pre-mine. It's controlled by Vitalik and other insiders who will determine the monetary policy. We have XRP, which is really the dumbest of the coins, being sued, Ripple being sued by the SEC. And then we have we have another coin, Cardano, a huge pre-mine run by a scammer, in my opinion, Charles Hoskinson. Then, of course, we have like VC coins like Polkadot and Solana, highly centralized Ethereum knockoffs like Binance, and then, of course, the dog coins. If we look here, we can see that these are the initial allocations for insiders for these coins. Solana, the red is insiders who were granted the amount of tokens they were granted to insiders, VCs, etc. Solana is really the biggest offender. Polkadot's down here. This is very, very different from the ethos of Bitcoin. There's really, you can look at this list, you can pretend that some of these are decentralized projects, but they're not. They all have pre-mines. They're all either controlled by VCs or controlled by a small oligarchy. And this is exactly what Satoshi was trying to get away from. And so far, only Satoshi has been able to create a system that's truly decentralized. You'll see decentralized in a lot of the marketing of XRP or Cardano. But when you have a large pre-mine, when you have a single node like you do with XRP, the Ripple node, which is the most important node, when you have various foundations, and when you have various insiders that were granted huge amounts of the token in the pre-sale or pre-mine, it skews the incentives from the start. So happy birthday, Bitcoin. We're very grateful to Satoshi for discovering or inventing Bitcoin. And we'll see what the next 13 years has to hold. Of course, back when the white paper was released in 2009, Bitcoin did not even have a price. Today it has a price of roughly $60,000 per Bitcoin and a market cap of over $1 trillion. It's really amazing when you think about it and look back on how quickly things have happened and how much has happened over the past 13 years. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.